The sun burned low over the horizon, spilling molten gold across the endless plains as Clara, Waverly tightened the shawl around her shoulders. Her heart pounding with each mile the stagecoach dragged her farther from the life she had known. She had not asked for this fate, nor had she dreamed of a life on a ranch so far from the comforts of town. But when word came that the McAllister Ranch needed a cook, she seized the chance to earn her keep and find a place in a world that was increasingly unkind to women on their own. The wheels rattled to a stop before a sprawling stretch of land, fenced by weathered posts, and there, framed against the fading sky, stood a man whose presence struck her with the force of a thunderclap. His hat-brim shaded eyes that had clearly seen more storms than sunshine, and the set of his jaw spoke of battles waged both with cattle and with loneliness. This was James McAllister, the widowed rancher whose name was whispered across the county with a mixture of respect and sorrow, for he had lost his wife 2 winters ago, and since then his house had gone cold, his table empty, his nights long. Clara stepped down, her boots crunching against the dirt, and for a moment neither spoke. The silence between them carried the weight of unspoken needs. "You'll find the kitchen in poor shape," he said finally, his voice a low rumble like distant thunder. "But the hands that can bring warmth back to it will find themselves. Welcome." Clara lifted her chin, meeting his gaze, and something flickered there, a recognition, a curiosity, a spark waiting to be kindled. Days passed, and Clara's presence transformed the house. The clatter of pots, the scent of bread rising, the warmth of stew bubbling. It was as if she stitched life back into the walls with every meal she prepared. Yet beneath the surface of domestic labor, there stirred another current neither could ignore. James would linger in the doorway, watching her knead dough, his eyes tracing the strands of hair that slipped loose from her bun. Clara, pretending not to notice, felt her pulse quicken whenever his shadow fell across the room. At night, after the dishes were dried and the lamps extinguished, she would hear him moving restlessly across the floorboards above, pacing as though wrestling with demons too heavy to face alone. One evening, a storm rolled over the plains, lightning carving jagged paths across the sky, thunder shaking the timbers of the house. Clara stood at the window, her heart thrumming with fear, when James appeared beside her. Without words, he laid his hand over hers, steady and warm, and the storm outside seemed to pale, compared to the tempest swelling inside her chest. That night, neither spoke of what they both knew. The ranch needed her hands to cook. Yes, but his lonely nights were beginning to demand something far deeper, something far more dangerous. And in that silence, in the heavy air of desire unspoken, the true story of their hearts began to take root. The weeks that followed were a slow burn, a dance of stolen glances and accidental touches that lingered too long. Clara tried to bury herself in the work of the kitchen, convincing herself that her purpose here was simple: to keep the house fed, to keep the ranch running. But each time she heard James's footsteps on the porch, each time his low voice carried across the room, her resolve wavered like a candle in the wind. One evening she ventured outside after supper, drawn to the quiet beauty of the fields swaying beneath the silver wash of the moon. There she found him seated on the fence, the glow of his pipe embers flickering against the shadow of his beard. He looked up, startled at first, then softened as she approached. "You've done more for this place in a month than I could have hoped for," he admitted, his voice rough with sincerity. Clara smiled faintly, her heart hammering in her chest, and for the first time dared to let her own longing slip free. "This place, it feels like home," she whispered, though what she meant was, "You feel like home." Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken truth, until James reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek, his hand lingering, trembling as though caught between fear and desire. That single touch shattered the dam of restraint. He pulled her close, and she melted into him, the warmth of his body banishing every cold night she had endured before. Their kiss was not just passion. It was a promise, raw and desperate, a vow forged beneath the endless sky that neither would be alone again. But the world has a way of testing love born in fire. The ranch hands whispered about Clara, some scoffing that she was just a hired cook, others hinting she might be more. Word spread fast in small towns. and soon tongues wagged, that the widow rancher had taken. Solace in the arms of a woman barely settled. James faced the whispers with stoic silence. But Clara felt the sting of every cruel word. One night she packed her bag, convinced she must leave before she brought ruin upon the man she had come to love. Yet when she opened the door, there he stood, broad shoulders blocking her path, eyes burning with fierce determination. "You don't run from me," he said, voice breaking with urgency. "This ranch may have needed your hands, Clara, but I need your heart. Don't you see? You've stitched me back together. I was dead inside until you walked through that door." Tears welled in her eyes as she dropped the bag and collapsed against him, his arms enveloping her, sealing the vow they had both been too afraid to speak aloud. From that night on, they faced the world together, cooking, working, loving beneath the wide sky, their bond unshaken by gossip, their passion blazing brighter than prairie fire. And as the dawn rose over the ranch, Clara knew she had not just found a job, she had found a destiny.